Dialogues. You are heading for the 11th edition of the Václav Havel European Dialogues. Let me introduce myself. My name is Eva Hrnčířová. I'm a member of the cabinet of the Vice President of the European Commission for Values, Transparency, and currently also Europe Fit for Digital Age, Madame Věra Jourová. And I hope I will be able to guide you through this evening. But before we start with the discussion, and we will have very distinguished guests in our panel, I would like to give the floor to Her Excellency Edita Hrda, Permanent Representative of the Czech Republic to the European Union. Please.
Thank you, Eva. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dobrý večer všem. It's my great pleasure to welcome you this evening here in the Prague House, and thank you to the director and to everybody in Prague House for hosting us. It's a bit different to the premises of the permanent representation. Traditionally, we started to meet here for the Dialogues of Václav Havel. Eva already said it's the 11th edition of Dialogues here in Brussels, and we are very proud about it. The situation changes. Václav Havel, you know very well, would be happy to speak with you about it, what is happening in Europe. With his strong opinions. Unfortunately, the world is changing, and this is not only the war in Ukraine caused by Russia, this is also that what is happening in Israel, and still human rights, freedom of expression, and other topics which were very dear to his heart are very important even today to be vocal about them, to speak about them and to exchange opinions about them. And this special edition of the Dialogues is also very important this year because this is the first time when the Commission issued the enlargement package, which deals not only with the countries from the Western Balkans, but also first time there is a lot about Ukraine, about Moldova, and also about Georgia. So I think it's important to see what perspective these countries have, what we want, what we expect. And today, during the FAC, the minister had the possibility also to speak with the 6 ministers of foreign affairs from Western Balkans. So very appropriate times to have these dialogues, and I am very happy that we share the organization also with the bilateral embassy, with my dear colleague Jakub Skalník, the bilateral ambassador to Belgium, whom I now give the micro and the floor, and welcome here, and I'm very much looking forward to listen from our guests, from Director General Koopman also, and for the 2 distinguished ladies, and especially from my minister here this evening, what are their opinions, and I hope that will be a lovely discussion. Jakub, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Edita. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, as someone who arrived to Brussels just 3 months ago, even though I was here before on innumerable one-day working trips, I feel truly privileged and honored to be here at this year edition of Václav Havel European Dialogues. As Ambassador Edita Hrda just said, we live in tumultuous times when many things that were considered given and to stay here forever are changing or even disappearing before our eyes. The rule-based world order is attacked from many different sides, positions, and angles. Populists of all political colors are offering simple solutions to even most complex problems. Terrorists are murdering innocent people, while dictatorships and totalitarian regimes are increasingly brutally oppressing their own people and attack or threaten their neighbors. During the presentation of my credentials on Tuesday last week to His Majesty King Philip, he mentioned the recollection of his personal encounter with President Václav Havel. and the strong and lasting impression that he made on him. I thought that at that moment that if Václav Havel was still alive, he would be a strong and internationally respected voice against populism, different sorts of political extremism, dictatorships, and authoritarian leaders. He would also warn against the tendencies in many countries to restrict basic human liberties and rights as foundations of democratic society. Democracy and freedom are very fragile and can be lost easily. I also would like to use this occasion to pay tribute to Karel Schwarzenberg, another champion of human rights and close collaborator and friend of Václav Havel, and our former Minister of Foreign Affairs, who passed away on Saturday. His voice, as well as his great and charming personality, will be deeply missed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you both. I would like to say that European dialogues are obviously dialogues that happen not only in Brussels. We have the 11th edition here in Brussels, but it's happening also in other cities. There are regularly European dialogues in Prague during spring, and during the fall we have an edition here in Brussels. Obviously, the aim of this dialogue is to contemplate and to discuss and to talk about current topics and current problems of Europe based on the legacy and thoughts and ideas of Václav Havel. So please don't be shy. We will be happy if you take part in this dialogue and if you share with us any ideas, questions, reflections during the evening. It will be definitely enriching. Let me introduce our distinguished guests here on the stage. First, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Jan Lipavský. Good evening. Gert-Jan Koopman, I hope I pronounce it well, Director General at the DG NEAR, which is the directorate responsible for enlargement and neighboring policy of the European Union. On my right hand, Daliborka Uljarević, Executive Director of the Center for Civic Education, one of the leading NGOs in Montenegro. And last but not least, Victoria Voytsitska from International Center for Ukrainian Victory, which you have co-founded after the Russian aggression, and it's a network of Ukrainian NGOs, if I put it correct. So, as we have heard, the world has changed. We see in the last, let's say, 2 years that geopolitics is the basis of all, and it creates a new dynamics. You come right from the FAC, if I'm not mistaken, so I dare to ask first if there are any news, because you've met with your Western Balkan colleagues, so maybe we can start with that.
There are always some news. The question is, what is the relevancy for the current world? And I think the FAC itself is some kind of washing machine, you know. So we wash the issues and politics, and one day something comes out of that. So no big announcement as such, but for example, in terms of the enlargement, since it was already mentioned here, we need to constantly remind us of the political will connected to that. And today, FAC and the meeting with the ministers of Balkan countries was a strong demonstration of such political will.
How much the new dynamics influences the negotiations, and you talked definitely also about the situation in Israel, so if you can evaluate a bit on that.
We have to understand that current world is going through. My observation is that we are going through the phase of global confrontation, which means that rules-based international order is challenged by a set of actors who are feeling that now is the time to challenge it. Putin is doing that through the war against Ukraine and following his goal of building up a great Russian imperium. And if we are not, if we are not able to build up our forces and our defenses against that, he might be successful one day. So we need. It's not just about Ukraine; it's about the whole European security. Same things we can follow in Middle Eastern area. It's not only about Hamas attacking Israel. It's Iran doing different kind of plots in the region as such. But also we should be aware of the global rise of China, and we need to be in constant discussion with them how to manage the whole thing. So situation is not easy, and we need geopolitical Europe. We need to understand that in Europe we need to craft a set of policies, and I'm going back to Western Balkans, that we need to not only provide a vision for countries which would like to one day become members of the EU, but we need to be constantly working on a set of policies which will able for their governments to make it a realistic step-by-step process. And I think it was our presidency, thank you for everyone who was working on that, which proved that there can be deliveries. I think even the Spanish presidency has and will have some delivery on that. And we need to continue with our political will.
Thank you. Vision for Europe and vision for the neighbors of Europe, that's definitely something what occupies Gert-Jan Koopman. European Union always tries to promote its values and to strengthen the relationship with the neighbors. So how do you see the current situation, how this can influence the relations with neighbors, and what can we offer them in this kind of situation where European Union is quite feeling the very delicate balance that needs to be found in the foreign policy?
Thank you very much, and good evening to all of you. First, let me say it's a pleasure and an honor to be here at such a prestigious event. And the topics we discuss are of very important significance. The Minister has just illustrated this. So let me say two things. I think first, Europe has found in this very difficult world a bit more self-confidence. We actually are the world's biggest trading bloc, and our values and what Europe is about, the European idea, is actually one of the most appealing ideas on offer globally. And that's what we see every day. Now, we need to translate this into what our president calls a geopolitical reality. And that means a different approach to our neighbors. Essentially, there are two things, and that brings me to my second point. I mean, enlargement is back because the countries that belong to the continent, that want to be members of the EU, and that can actually meet our standards, should be taken in. And in the past, we've not always been so welcoming, but new geopolitical realities mean that we have to work hard and that they will have to work hard to take them in. So that's true for the East, but it's also true for the Western Balkans, where we have to rethink the approach we take. And that also means emphatically that we need to move fast and that we need to offer them concrete steps as soon as possible. And that is one of the ideas behind this new growth plan for the Western Balkans, long overdue in my mind. Secondly, for the countries outside of the EU, in our neighborhood, we need to work differently with them. We cannot satisfy ourselves with disjointed policies where we offer them some development assistance, some trade policies, some energy policies. No, we need comprehensive partnerships with our key partners around us in the interest of stability and in the interest of protecting our European Union. And that's also what we're doing. So if we want to be geopolitically relevant, we need to up our game, and that is really what this is all about. Thank you.
I would oppose with the ideas of Václav Havel, because he always felt, and he has mentioned that in many of his speeches, that Europe needs to find the self-confidence, and that maybe Europe feels a bit too much like a lecturer of the rest of the world. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, thoughts of Václav Havel. So it would be only positive if the situation has already changed. Anyway, Václav Havel was a strong advocate of the civil sector. He believed that only through the connection of the state and civil sector can the change of the societies and the transformation of the democratic societies come true. I would like to remind you of some words. European civic structures will be the better equipped, the new democracies will be for membership better equipped, the faster they will embrace the principles of confidence in their citizens and of subsidiarity, and the more stable they will become as states. Both Daliborka and Victoria are from the civil sector. So can you tell us what is the situation first in Montenegro, and how does the civil sector contribute to the change of the society on the way to the European Union?
First of all, good evening to all, and let me say that to express sincere gratitude to the organizers for the privilege of representing the vibrant civil society at this year Václav Havel European Dialogues. It's really an honor. Getting back to your question, I believe that the mission of the civil society is to be constantly awakened, to monitor and to watchdog what the authorities are doing, and to try to be a kind of a guardian for the rule of law, for democracy, human rights and linked issues, in terms of positioning them on the agenda and pushing for the adequate addressing of this issue. And this is not easy. I mean, in all of our countries, especially when you do have the politicians who are of the modest format, who do not understand the essence of democracy, and civil society organizations are often under the threat and endangered, especially if they are critical voices. And this is the situation in Montenegro. We had it. And in that sense, I would underline also the good observation of the European Commission in our annual report that has noted this unfavorable environment for the civil society, and that the highest level politicians have been limiting space for the critical voices. I think that this synergy is very important. I'm talking about the synergy of the civil society and the European Commission and the member states who are really in line with the democratic principles. Just for this part, we often talk about captured states in the Western Balkans. I think that we should talk about the captured societies. And this is the essence of the problems, because we see that the political structures are changing, but we do not see the progress in the content and in the promotion of the values. And this is, I believe, why Václav Havel, a champion of democracy, has been recognizing this important role of the civil society. But we are not working outside of the society. We work as an integral part, and I think that we should also think more about comprehensive approach and how do we return the focus on values. Because this is what has happened after the Russian aggression to Ukraine, and it has shaken the world in many aspects. But one of the major issues one of the major messages that has been sent is that we have forgotten the importance of the values and that we should return them back. And I think that even the support that the EU is granting to the countries should be somehow conditioned by that part, because if it is lost, technical progress and everything else is easily to be faked, and political will is often expressed. But we see that it also it is left at the level of the rhetoric far too often. And if we don't have the politicians who understand that rule of law is not their right to rule.
Thank you very much. Values, it's definitely something what the Ukrainians are fighting for, and you are definitely fighting for all of us and for the European values. So how is the situation of the civil sector in Ukraine? Are you still able to work in these incredible conditions?
Thank you, Eva, for the question. Good evening, everyone. And I also want to thank the organizers for the invitation to be present at this distinguished event. I want to start by quoting Václav Havel when he said, "We must not be afraid of dreaming the seemingly impossible if we want the seemingly impossible to become a reality." This is what happened back in 2013 when we all dreamt of becoming a member of European Union, coming back to the European family. This is when the Euromaidan started, that then turned into Revolution of Dignity. And as a result, we had a change of people in the government, in the parliament, and some of us went to serve the people in the parliament, like myself. I was for 5 years a member of the parliament. Some of us went to work in the civil societies, and this is where the reanimation package of reform, a coalition of NGOs was formed that was very closely working with the parliament, that was setting the reforms agenda, and we had lots of progress at that time. I have to say that we have succeeded to continue the efforts of the civil societies in the current parliament, even during the wartime. Myself, I represent an international center of Ukrainian victory. It's indeed a unique platform, advocacy platform that is formed from the representatives of different civil societies and former members of the parliament. We've been advocating from the start of the full-scale invasion, the invitation to the European Union. Together with the government, we were and we are working together closely with the parliament, with the government, when it comes to getting the assistance from our partners in such fields as, for example, military assistance, in such fields as EU accession, etc., etc. So yes, it's been quite a challenge to do our job, but while we are fighting the war in Ukraine, the survival war, we are also working on the future of our country. This is why we're focusing not only on the external agenda, working with the partners with respect to the needs and the help that Ukraine has to have right now to survive and win this war, but also with respect of the future. And for that, in this regard, it's important to thank our partners here in Brussels, in European Union, especially the European Commission, for the decision, the positive decision that they made recently with regard to the opening the accession negotiations, which of course entailed quite a comprehensive list of the reforms that Ukraine will have to go through and is already going through. And we as representatives of civil societies are ready to do our job together with our partners, together with our government, together with our parliament. Still, I think there is something we need to remember. There are lots of representatives of civil societies who are fighting this war on the battlefield. There are lots of people we've lost already during the war. So the question of the capacity at the governmental level, by the way, as well, and the civil society is quite crucial right now. So we need more hands, we need more support in this regard to make sure that we will succeed not only by winning the war, but actually doing our homework in time, in full, to become a member of the European Union.
Thank you. I'm looking at Gert-Jan because he will be definitely able to tell us about the enlargement package that was released last week and that recommended Ukraine to open the accession negotiations. What is the progress Ukraine does from the Brussels perspective? And we have heard a lot about if it's not the geopolitics that makes EU to decide now about Ukraine. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, let me say that Ukraine would have earned this recommendation also if there hadn't been a war. So on merit. And I think that is something I think we should all take to heart, because it's one thing to undertake these very far-reaching reforms in peacetime, but it's really another thing to do that when you are being literally bombarded. I can tell you that we've had negotiating sessions, discussions that were interrupted because people had to go to the bomb shelters. We've been in bomb shelters as well. And I think we should pay testimony to our Ukrainian friends for undertaking all of these very far-reaching reforms in such difficult circumstances. But they've earned it on merit, this recommendation. However, second point, it's only the start, right? And that is something which everyone needs to take to heart. Accession process, I mean, sometimes people ask me to describe it, it's like rewriting the operating system of your country. It's really very far-reaching. You, in the Czech Republic and in our old new member states, or new old member states, I'm not quite sure how to describe, you know that. So there is still a lot of work to be done, and the reforms need to be sustained over a long period of time to also really change the way the country works, you know, the track record, as we call it. So I think Ukraine is already quite far advanced, very ambitious objectives. We are going to be setting together, I hope, a path forward that, if it's up to me, will be much faster in terms of how we work together than we've done in the past. So a lot of progress there. Also a lot of progress in Moldova. Even slightly more progress than Ukraine, I should say. So another country that we have recommended to open negotiations with. And you know, I think the challenge now is to reinvigorate in the Western Balkans the accession process to make sure that it gains the same speed as it had a few years back, as we now see in the Western Balkans. So all in all, I think that also means we ourselves in the EU and in the European Commission, we have to work a little bit differently, a little bit more actively. We should, picking up on Victoria's point, also offer more support. I think we have often left enlargement countries a little bit alone, and that's very different from the 2004 period where we had a much closer collaboration, so I want to change that as well. But all in all, I think there are huge opportunities, and we simply cannot fail that. I mean, our president talks about the call of history, and I think it is very much the call of history, so it's now our obligation, our duty to make it work.
Václav Havel also believed that enlargement of the European Union is obviously, and the deeper integration is obviously the only way forward and the only way for Europe, and that it's in the strategic and essential interest of the EU to enlarge. Minister, again, you've talked today with the Balkan European leaders or ministers, your counterparts. Did you hear from them that the process is not fast enough and or should go faster and in a bit different rhythm?
I think what I have heard most importantly is the will to be part of different kind of processes, which we do have here in Brussels. And a lot of work has been done in different countries of Western Balkans, and we need to be looking for ways.
You're an immigrant working in, I don't know, Germany or Austria, and you wire your money back to the country you come from. You pay huge fees at the moment. That is something we can take away. Of course, that comes with reforms. They will have to do work on anti-money laundering, for example. But these are very real gains. And I think the problem of the classical enlargement model where you reform for ages and then there's a big bang and you join, that doesn't work. Societies don't have that type of patience, and politicians will find it very hard to keep the reform pace up if there isn't early delivery. So we want them to integrate early in the internal market, on the condition also that they integrate amongst themselves. These are very small economies. If they integrate amongst themselves through something we call the common regional market, that will add 10% to their GDP. And that will be a condition also for integrating them in the internal market. So as an economist, as you call me a money man, I've tried to work and put together a package where there are very strong incentives to deliver the right solutions. And I think, if I'm honest, in many of our budget instruments, in many of the areas of the EU where we fund common policies, there are such conditionalities. But in the external policies, we give a lot of money and then we say if it goes wrong, we take it away. That doesn't work. You should do it the other way around.
I think we need a reflection from Montenegro.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I think that this confronting the concerning trend of democratic backsliding is not only about investing money in the institutions in the countries, even though it's clear that the European Union has as the first counterpart the authorities, the institutions. But I don't think that even if we would take the numbers and how much it was invested into these processes through the authorities and how much it was invested through the civil society will actually show that I think it's about 5% that goes to the civil society. And let me illustrate this with the example of Montenegro. NGOs are with all of the public opinion polls between the either between the 3 or 5 most trusted institutions, organizations in general categories, whereas political parties are always at the bottom, as well as parliament, as well as the government, and there is a very low level of the trust into the judiciary, both in the courts and prosecution. I think that the question should be put to what has been done wrong and how it comes that such an investment in the civil society produces such a trust of people, and on the other hand they don't trust the institutions that are actually vital for democratic consolidation. Civil society has a limitation. I mean, whatever we do, there is a ceiling. So what I'm trying to say is that this is also about the politics, and one of the lessons in the politics is also that it requires compromises, but these compromises cannot be with everybody, and with taking into the account that the values will be undermined. And let me just conclude this. I'm talking about also the cooperation with the undemocratic leaders, such as Aleksandar Vučić in the Western Balkans, who is obviously a problem for all of the countries and not a part of any solution. But the policy of appeasement is keeping him. And there is a lot of the EU money invested in the Serbia, whereas the support for the EU is declining. How that comes? Because there is the systematic campaign from the authorities to decline this support, to play on all of the sides. So basically, my message is that the values should be more conditional in this. I do agree that this kind of the investment is and the procedures and this bureaucratic part is a part of the process, that it goes together, that you can't distinguish it. But I think that the values should have priority, and this is something where the EU should also reconsider reshaping some of its own policies. both concerning to the acceding countries, and especially because we have such a methodology now which puts into the focus fundamentals. There is no advancement in the fundamentals if we disregard the values. And this is something which Václav Havel was very much underlining. I think that this is the essence of the European Union as such. Everything else is added value. Added value is the economic benefit, even though this is much easier to communicate with people because it's a direct benefit, fast benefit, etc. But if we are not changing the societies, we are not progressing. And the investment in money will not compensate for that, because the point is to get out from the authoritarian regimes and to make it sustainable as the societies.
Do you want to react?
Very quickly, I mean, just to say that the fundamentals, you said it yourself, the fundamentals are at the center of the enlargement methodology. And let me give you a very clear example. So you mentioned Serbia. I won't comment on your qualifications, but just to say that we have said very clearly in the enlargement package, cluster 3 on competitiveness is technically open to move forward. However, in the absence of more alignment on the CFSP, our common foreign security policy, which is an expression, if you will, of the values, this will probably not be opened. We also have been very clear that there has to be accountability for what happened in Kosovo, in North Kosovo. And we've been clear that progress on the normalization is going to be essential also to take the country in. We're working very closely with civil society, and we're funding civil society. We have been having a very intensive discussion on the media laws with our Serbian colleagues. So the process is one where these issues are addressed, and in fact, unless you move forward decisively also on these issues, then you will not progress. And what we're now doing is not substituting money for values. In fact, we're using money to put even more pressure on these values being promoted. Because otherwise you won't progress on the accession path, and you won't progress on the economic path. And I think that's necessary. Ultimately, it's for countries to make choices. It's not for the EU Commission to make choices. But to name another country, for Georgia, we have said we grant you candidate status. That's our proposal. But we've also said, listen, don't engage in free trade agreements with China. That doesn't really make sense if you want to be part of the EU, because trade is a policy of the EU, not a policy of member states. And stop the hate speech. Make sure that this type of debate is addressed. And finally, also align yourself on the CFSP. So, what we're trying to do is to encourage, to condition, and to use the tools we have to get movement in the right direction. But ultimately, these are choices societies have to make. And I can tell you, to again go back to Georgia, the day that our recommendations came out, thousands of people were on the streets of Tbilisi with European flags. And if I can say this, our ambassador rang me. He said, listen, I've never been kissed by a man, but my doorman kissed me on the cheeks to congratulate me so it's ultimately also the people who have to make their choices, and we need to help.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you. If I may, that was the point I wanted to also raise, and that's our responsibility. I mean, the member states' responsibility, who are creating policies of the EU and the European community as such, that we are providing a vision and a hope to the people of countries of Eastern Partnership and Western Balkans. So it's not only a bureaucratic process looking at alignment in policies and different kind of laws and acquis communautaire, etc. It is still the promise which was given not to governments but generally to the people of those countries, which puts a lot of responsibility on us, because not to fulfill this promise, and it doesn't mean that we would leave something from those merits-based considerations, but to not fulfill politically this promise would create a feeling of betrayal. And that's a very dangerous one. The same argumentation goes in regard of our support towards Ukraine and people of Ukraine who are fighting against Russian imperialism. So it's not only about bureaucratic processes, it's about the big vision of common Europe being fulfilled, and this is what brings us back to Václav Havel, actually.
Yes, I'm sure Victoria wants to say a lot.
Just a couple of points. From my past, when I was in the parliament, and I remember the long list of the reforms that was presented to us that we were supposed to work on, and we did, and we've succeeded, and the boxes were ticked. The boxes by the government, the boxes by the parliament, and our partners, both in the EU and other countries. What was missing, and I think this is the lesson that we need to learn, two things. First of all, saying that Ukraine adopted, let's take for example, a law on electricity market is not enough. We need to make sure that the philosophy, the ideas that were in the law are implemented, and we're far from there. So before ticking the box, let's make sure that the reforms they do transform into real changes. And most importantly, and this is the part that was missing, and I believe is still missing in lots of the discussions, we miss the communication with the society. Yes, there is this great dream, hope, to become member of the European Union. Everyone understands that we need to do lots of things. We have to reform ourselves. We have to become those people who will be sitting at the same table and knowing how to use knife and fork, not just a spoon, so to say. But we also need to explain and be able to communicate with people, ordinary people, why certain reforms are needed, what will be impact on their day-to-day life, today, tomorrow, in the long run. Because there are lots of things that we need to do that are painful at the beginning, but they will provide the fruits and will become into fruition in 5-10 years, and we will see the positive results. But people need to understand that we have to do it because these are the results that we will receive. These are the results they can expect. And this part, I think we also need to pay close attention to and definitely invest into.
I am looking at you now. Are there any ideas, questions, reflections from the audience? Yes, please.
Thanks. I was just thinking to what you say at the last. And what about also speaking to the people of the old member states? Because I think they have also to be convinced that is a good way to proceed. So what's your suggestion in this sense? Thanks.
To whom do you ask the question?
I don't know. Whoever has a reply.
Well, I think you've mentioned already, it's about geopolitical importance, right? And the strategic importance for the European Union to make sure that, I would say, there are no green zones between democratic Europe and autocratic Russia, for example, right? Well, Ukraine has been a gray zone for a very long time. And we've paid, and we're paying a huge price for that. Although I believe we do deserve to be part of the European family from lots of perspectives. And definitely the energy, the progress that we will bring to Europe and European Union is enormous. The energy that is translated into, for example, one of the most vibrant industries such as IT. And we have a lot to bring to the table. We have a lot to bring to the table when it comes to, for example, critical minerals that are needed for the Green Deal to be successful for the European Union, there is a very long list of benefits that we can discuss. But most importantly, I think it's about recognizing that Ukrainians are in our nature, in our history, we have proven to be part of the European family.
So if I'm right, the question was what to tell to the people of the member states, why it is important that enlargement happens. Okay, it's very simple. It's us or them in quotas, and into them you can fill in Russian influence, Chinese influence, influence of other neighbors. I think it's quite clear who else is trying to be present, especially in Western Balkans. So it is also very strong geopolitical choice that we are able to do so, and that we do it. We do it in a way that will lead to the final stage of enlargement, even though we know it cannot happen overnight, and that the Big Bang won't work. But on the other side, we cannot step back from the rule of law and all those principles which makes the EU such a stronger union, such a strong union.
I remember, if I may have a personal memory, being a journalist at that time when Czechia was preparing for the accession to the European Union. When Günther Verheugen, at that time the Commissioner for Enlargement, came to Prague, he was like a king from the moon, and we used to analyze every word and every sentence he said, and it had a huge impact on the media and everything. So how is the public opinion in Montenegro, and what are the desires of people connected with the EU?
Thank you. Montenegrin citizens are having their European dream, and this is also reflected in a very high support for the accession of Montenegro to the EU. With all of the researches, it is for years around 75%. Couple of percent up and down, but this is really strong, even though the process is not really moving. I mean, we are in the 11th year of the negotiations, and this year we got the European Commission report, which I think is one of the most negative, and where one of the conclusion is that Montenegrin authorities have often ignored both European Commission and Venice Commission recommendations. This is indicating that the influence of the both EU, but also we can talk about other Western partners, is declining. Unfortunately, the influence of some malign states is increasing. The reasons are manifold, but I think that also citizens are expressing, because we often do these public opinion researches on different topics, that they are more mature than the leaders they are leading them, which should be actually contrary. I mean, we are choosing some people because they are supposed to seem, let's say, higher from the position that they sit on. They are supposed to have a vision. They are supposed, as Václav Havel was having it, they are supposed to have this power to transform the societies. This is still not happening, I mean, in the country, and I think that even with the elections, they are showing that they are not happy. I mean, we are now by the way, in the phase of very frequent elections. After decades of having the same political structure, we are now changing that much quickly. But this is also showing that and citizens are more effective in punishing politicians for the promises that they have not fulfilled, for the failed expectations that they had. So, in overall, I think that the potential which exists in the societies, if we are talking about the level of the citizens, if we are talking about the level of some other structures, is much better off than the one which is reflected through the political structures. How do we make that to be reversed? How do we make that to be more visible? This is the question that we are also trying to find the answer, and this is why I'm returning all of the time on values. I think if we would have the leaders who are led by the values, not by their personal and party interests, that the things could have been much different. Of course, they are also aware that this is a risky road to them, because the genuine acceptance of these values and standards and procedures is limiting these monopolies of power, and nobody wants that. Obviously, in the Western Balkans, we need to find a way how to do that, even though they don't want to. And finally, I think it's very important to the extent that citizens are also better off than the authorities that we have. Recently, we had a research which was both between Montenegro and Serbia, comparing also, among the other things, some of the value orientations. And I can tell you that most of the Montenegrin citizens feel closer the movement in the Second World War, which was fighting against fascists. Most of them believe that in Srebrenica genocide has happened. Most of them are supporting Ukraine and sanctions to Russia, etc., etc. This is unfortunately not reflected within the political subjects that are currently in our government and leadership. And we will see what kind of the influence that will have in the further process, and who will actually make which impact, and whether the society will succeed to change the authority, or the authority will change in negative aspects the society. And this is actually my comment, which was concerning European Commission and European Union in overall, that they should be more strict. I think that this new Brussels language, if we actually use something which Orwell was using, or this bureaucratic approach, is not sometimes understood by citizens, and it's very manipulated by the politicians. I would like to hear very direct messages from Brussels, who has performed, who has not performed, in a way that it will be equally clear, not only to us who are reading these reports for decades, but also to the carpenter from my small town, to somebody who is not having this profound education about the way how the European institutions are functioning. At the moment when they understand in the same manner Brussels, I think we will have more of the chances for the genuine change.
I would call this the power of the powerless in practice. Does it speak to you, Gert-Jan?
Yeah, no, it's critical, because at the end of the day, both in the acceding countries, but also in the member states, the current member states, it's people who are going to decide whether this works. Mm-hmm. I mean, I come from a country that not so long ago voted against where the people voted against an association agreement with Ukraine based on a lot of nonsense in the public space. In some of the accession countries, I see debates that frankly bear no resemblance to reality and are manipulated. That is true. So yes, communication is important. We're trying to be clear. I think it is very, very hard for the European Commission to be an actor in the public space in quite the same way as you CSOs can be in our enlargement countries. But having said that, we need to do so. And I also believe that sometimes in the past we have been a little bit too shy to express our views. If you read our reports, you mentioned that the report about Montenegro was critical, but I'm not mincing my words. The past 2 years, the country has lost its way a little bit because the reforms were not undertaken. Now we have a new government that is very pro-European, and we see more engagement. And we need to work with the governments that are in place. It's ultimately the governments that take decisions. So yes, we have a daunting challenge ahead of us. I think this momentum that people feel is real. It's a window that is open, wide open. But if we get it wrong, the window can close also. And that, therefore, I think we can spend a lot of time looking backwards, criticizing leaders that maybe should have done more. That's not going to get us anywhere. The leaders who we have are the leaders who we have to work with. I think they have also a historic opportunity and a historic duty. If they get it wrong, we will all get it wrong. So we need to work very hard to ensure that real progress is made. I think in the Western Balkans, the history is not pretty on both sides. I think we have put a very credible offer on the table. We'll be redoubling our efforts with all of the governments. We'll be very clear where we need to go. In Ukraine, I think we are putting forward not just a very ambitious accession process, but also a package of 50 billion euros to support the country, the largest ever package made for a third country, rightly so. No, it's essential. So I think we're doing what we can, but ultimately, I feel, especially in the Western Balkans, we spend a lot of time looking backwards. The countries argue about battles that took place several centuries ago. This is not the way forward. This is not the European way. We need to look forward.
Unfortunately, also the window of Minister Lipavsky and his presence here is almost closed. So unless you want to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to add one little intervention before I need to leave to catch my plane to Prague. We mentioned our responsibility towards people of those countries, and of course, there is the ultimate responsibility of the government of those countries to the political representation, not only government, political representation to push through necessary reforms, to make steps, and to align with the European community. But there is also responsibility of the people of those countries to elect such government and such a political representation which will work on that goal. Very good reminder of that is case of Ukraine. It was December 2013 when a small demonstration against Yanukovych's decision not to sign association agreement between the EU and Ukraine. And you know that the association agreement, don't cite me, but it's nothing. It's a piece of paper showing goodwill on both sides to meet and greet and discuss issues. It's definitely not such a huge significance, but it was enough for young people on Maidan Square to protest against the decision not to sign it because of the order from Moscow. And basically this started the whole chain of events we are witnessing right now. It means Maidan, and then the first war in Donbass, and the theft of Crimea, and now we are back to the full-scale war. And it was the people of Ukraine who decided that they want to be part of the European community, ergo being member of Western civilization and the EU and NATO. So it's also responsibility of the people of those countries that the whole process will be successfully finished. And I think we should be also able to help them with that vision.
Yeah, one sentence because the minister is leaving.
Yes.
Just one sentence because you are leaving. I remember now, I think it's important to underline because with all of my criticism towards some of the communication which could be different, I think that the Czech voice was very much vocal in the period of the presidency, but also afterwards in terms of underlining what the country has done good, but where the interventions are needed and what are the challenges and who is responsible for it. And I think that this kind of the approach, which was very rare and it still remains rare between the member states, is one of those which would be beneficial both for the European Union and for us, which are in the process of acceding.
Thank you both. Thank you, Minister, for being with us. I think
when we try to sell the values of the EU, we try to make countries more healthy democracies. If we cannot avoid that the politicians, they lie to their citizens, in a frame nowadays that more and more with artificial intelligence we will see that this will happen in the next years, which tools we can put towards the citizens that they are not tech-wise to see a better choice on their democracies.
I just add that we have a replacement here. Edita Hrda is here with us, permanent representative of the Czech Republic to the European Union. But maybe we can start with Victoria. Maybe you can tell us how to influence the citizens.
Well, how to influence the citizens? There are different ways, and obviously it's through the civil societies, and civil societies who understand the complexities of the processes and who are able to transform the bureaucratic language into simple words to explain to people, but obviously with the help of our European partners. I mean, we need to have the tools and the means to deliver those messages on a regular basis. Ukraine has shown that one of the reforms that we have conducted and we're working on still is the decentralization reform. It's been quite successful. And I think working and speaking with local communities directly at town hall meetings, we don't have those, for example, such discussions, practices of such discussions yet. And I think that might be one of the solutions, to have regular meetings with people, inviting them and discuss with them those complicated topics. One of the examples. The other one is we have state news outlets. Unfortunately, A, they are underfunded, and B, during the war, they are controlled, so to say, by the government. And I think it's important to bring back their independence and provide them with additional financing so that they have special programs like the ones that we had during the era of privatization, when there were special programs on the TV explaining to people what the privatization is about, what are the consequences for people, etc., etc. So there are different means that can be used, but most importantly is not just say that that Ukraine needs to tackle those boxes, ABC, do reform A, B, C, D, right? But explain to people why we need to do it, what will be the impact on their lives, when and how they will feel it. So those dialogues, we need to build like an infrastructure in Ukraine for that. Because although it is a great inspiration, there is a great hope for EU membership. But I understand that the path, especially looking at other countries, will be painful and will be filled with lots of challenges. And I think we need to learn from the examples of other countries, how they went through. And I think it's important to look at Czech, at Poland and other countries, our closest neighbors, and maybe even bring them to such discussions so that they can start sharing their experience, what they went through, how it worked for them, what were the challenges, and show the real, well, everyone sees the real results, but still explain what to expect along the way. It's also important. I hope I've answered your question.
What could be improved for the NGOs and civil sector to make them better messengers and defenders of the citizens?
I think it's needed a more strategic approach towards the NGOs and systematic support in that respect, because it's very stressful when you are in civil society, when you're thinking between the calls for proposals to have a wider picture and to try to focus on these battles which are ongoing, and this can be done through the change of these granting schemes, and think more about the institutional grants which could actually help civil society organizations to work where they are the best. And I think it's very important, and it would be good both for the member states and the EU to put more focus on the education through these calls for proposals. I was listening to Victoria, and also the question how do we change the positions in the society? How do we make citizens more proactive? I think that the ultimate answer is in the education. I'm talking about the improvement of the formal education, which is in a serious decline in the region. I'm talking about offering of the other alternative sources. I'm also talking in that sense about the media literacy and how do they read, what they listen, what they hear from the media, which are now overwhelmed with disinformation, and this is really having a serious and very often damaging impact to the processes within the society. I think that the investment of those who are actually distributing this information is much more than investment into trying to prevent them and to make people to distinguish these things. And this is exactly what Mr. Koopman was saying, that we have very often these senseless discussions which are basically induced by that. I mean, because of the available information that you have, and with most of the mainstream media, the level of the journalism is very low, and we often forget about professionalism and talk about professionalism media when we are talking about endangered media environment. It's endangered in one sense because there is a serious concern about the safety of the journalists, but on the other hand, the most serious question to my notion is also how to improve the professionalism in media, how to really have the investigative journalism, because that would help also civil society organizations to reveal some of the things in a much more plastic or more appealing manner, and to influence on people. Sometimes, because this synergy is needed within the society and also with the actors outside of the society. I think that we are now having the consequences that those who are enemies of democracy, those who are veto players, have been much better in synchronizing their efforts than those who are the champions of democracy and who are actually trying to mainstream values and democratic values and standards. Of course, it's not easy to keep together and to have a consensus between those who are free thinkers. It's much more easy to do that with the others who are more like the followers, but we need to invest the effort, because I believe honestly that citizens deserve that. I believe in their potential. I see this vibrant approach within the civil society, but more comprehensive, more robust approach is needed also from the other sides.
If you speak about education, about media literacy, about quality of journalism, I can assure you that this is everything on our to-do list also in Czech Republic, and we need to improve that as well. Maybe Edita would like to share a bit of our experience of the past that we went after the fall of the communism, and what it takes to get to the current state of democracy in Czech Republic.
No, this is quite a tricky question, I have to say. That would be for a long evening here. I think something what I am always saying to all my colleagues who are coming to me and asking what will be in the enlargement package and how we should do it and when it will come. I am telling them, patience, patience, patience. You have to work a lot on everything what is needed to be done, and don't be desperate, because what is very important to have in mind that what we experience during our negotiations, how many times we were feeling we are almost there. Now it comes and the invitation will arrive and that's it. And how many times we were sitting there looking at more conditions to fulfill, and we were aware that it's important, really, to go through all these very difficult structural changes, to get there and to be a good member of this European Union family. It is so important not to forget about anything. It will be, at the end, and you see, it's very political. We are working now on the Council conclusions, where we will welcome that, what the Commission stated in this enlargement package, and where we, us 27, have to decide what need to be the next steps, and we will be looking towards the Commission, who is the angel guardian of all this process. But I think something what Gert-Jan was saying is very important. Now, more and more speaking about it, how gradually we need to include the Western Balkans countries, the Eastern Partnership countries into that what we are doing. This is why, and Minister was not commenting on this, there was one, don't quote me please, quite concrete discussion today about that. How can we be helpful? What everything we can do with the countries from Western Balkan, concretely, now, step by step, where we can help. How maybe in the future, in the foreign policy, when the alignment, you spoke about it, will be there, if they can come to the FAC, to PSC meetings, to our working parties, to listen, to see how the politics is made, how the decisions are made, to be part more and more of the family. How much was done already in the case of Ukraine? During the crisis, how we incorporated certain part of Ukrainian, let's say, industries into our internal market. Energy, never ever seen before. I think this is what, they are very important steps. It's a learning path. We were learning a lot, but we are still waiting. Now there is the chance to go step by step somehow and to create this broader family. And I think speaking about, if I may, speaking about how the citizens can somehow be included into all this process. I think that's Jakub, who knows it very well. He was a mayor, and he knows how it was difficult for the people and for the leadership also to prepare the region for the first steps, and you have many experiences also on Balkans from the past. So yeah, I think Jakub is the right person then to answer certain questions on that, because he made it really in the praxis there in his town.
Would you like to share some insights about that? Please, Your
How much time
Excellency.
do we have?
We are slowly getting to the end, but
Okay, I will try to be quick. Yeah, it was at the beginning of the 90s. There was a huge difference between our situation and the situation in the region of Western Balkans. Now, not only today, but for basically since the end of the wars in former Yugoslavia, because there was a lot of euphoria in Czechoslovakia, in the whole Central Europe, and we clearly knew what we wanted and what we didn't want. We wanted to go from the system, from the regime, which majority of us disliked or even hated. We didn't know exactly how the democratic let's say, a free market country looks like and work, but we definitely wanted to move to the direction. Even though if I recollect how the situation was, for example, in my small town of Polička in the early 90s, if I for the first time had a chance to compare the situation in which we were and our Western counterparts, the municipalities of the same size, it seemed to be impossible. It's not even get closer, but even to seemingly resemble the situation there, because infrastructure modern infrastructure was non-existent. We basically had to build everything from the scratch, but because there was a lot of energy, a lot of strong will to move ahead, we succeeded, and we would do it even without the prospect of being the member of the European Union or any other Western institution, because we were doing it for ourselves. We simply wanted it. When I was ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the main difference in the situation between what was in Central Europe in the 90s and what is there is that people, at least in Bosnia and Herzegovina, if this is the country I can speak from my experience about, they didn't know exactly what to. They want to become the members of the European Union, but the main reason is that they believe that it brings them the better standard of living, and then it will help to get rid of their politicians. Because they simply believe that politicians like those they have cannot function in the European Union. But on the other hand, they believe that Europe will do it for them, that Europe will get rid of the politician. And the other thing is, they also do not. I was surprised how little people in Bosnia and Herzegovina know about how the life in the democratic Europe looks like. And there was a strong so-called, I call it Yugo nostalgia. People, and by Yugo nostalgia, I don't mean that people wanted to have former Yugoslavia back, but that kind of society that was, and the way of life, because they believe that why should we go through the painful reforms with the goal which is not clear to us, if the good times already were there. It was in the 70s, 80s, basically, or mid-80s, when they felt happy in the country they lived in, where there was zero unemployment, where back then their standard of living was much higher than ours. They were allowed to travel abroad, they were allowed to work abroad. Why should we go through this difficult, painful process without any clear results for us if we already experience the society that we like to live in? And that's, I don't want to sound, let's say, pessimistic or negative, but because I still believe that the European Union should take the countries of Western Balkans as well as Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia as the EU members. But the situation there, at least in the Western Balkans, is way more difficult than it ever was in our case.
Thank you very much. You have a unique opportunity to ask the very last question, if there is any. In the back, in the very back.
Okay, it was something I wanted to say. Sorry, English isn't my first language. It's more a remark than a question, but I strongly believe that we need to educate our youth, because fake news, disinformation is truly something that is destroying democracy. And I'm thinking about biased medias and I'm sorry. People are listening to things that aren't true, and I'm a student at ULB, so I have some classmates who have like sources such as TikTok, and I strongly believe that we need to teach them how to criticize sources. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. This is what we have talked about here already, that the fight against disinformation and media literacy and critical thinking is definitely something what we need not to build, not just in Western Balkans, Ukraine or accession countries, but also here in Europe. Anybody would like to comment on that? Thank you for this remark, and let me finish with a couple of sentences of Václav Havel. We are all in the same boat, and that boat is steering a good course, and it will continue to do so so long as all its passengers share the responsibility and do not play their own game and follow their private interests. Shouting about unspecified national interests, which is simply a cover for lack of self-confidence, is not the way to acquire prestige or a unique position in an existing community. That can be achieved only by a purposeful interaction with others and involvement in the common cause. So I hope that we will be able to meet these words. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for being a part of the 11th Václav Havel's European Dialogues here in Brussels. Thanks a lot to our distinguished panelists. Thank you for your ideas and thoughts. And we can continue. The evening is not finished yet. We can continue with a glass of wine in our hands, and discussion can still go on. Thank you for your attention.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let me only say that I would like also to thank Jitka Láta-Znamenáčková, our PSC ambassador, and Tamara Katuščáková, who prepared this all for us here, and also to Prague House. And to say that the 17th of November is approaching. We will be again lighting the candles there where Václav Havel has his bench, close to the European Parliament, at 17 o'clock. You are very much welcomed, and you can then come to our Perm Rep also for a glass of warm wine and some tea and some drinks. And you can watch also and visit our exhibition, which we have in the Perm Rep. It's called the Czech Underground, and it's very nice photos of our dissidents and their families in the premises of the permanent representation. This is on the beginning of our month celebrating human rights, going towards the 10th of December. Important day, Human Rights Day. So you will be very much welcome, and thank to all the panelists for coming. It's a great pleasure, and I hope we can repeat it next year again here in Brussels. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.